Hello and welcome to the Learn Up series where I discuss aspects of ADHD I think more people should know about. My name is Jasmine and I am a multidisciplinary ADHD wellness coach with a background in human development, Asian American studies, and public health. Over the last couple of years, I've seen a lot of discourse about everyone having ADHD now and how people will use it as an excuse. So I wanted to clear up some misunderstandings by discussing the history of ADHD. ADHD was first introduced into the DSM-2, also known as the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders in 1968 under the name Hyperkinetic Reaction of Childhood. Hyper meaning over or too much, and kinetic relating to motion. It was characterized by hyperactivity, restlessness, and a short attention span in children, and symptoms presented as excessive motor activity, and was believed to be a developmental delay in children that they would typically outgrow in adolescence. It's important to put times into perspective, so we should keep in mind that Jim Crow laws that promoted racial segregation were still in practice at the time of publication, and that 3 years prior, 1965, marked the beginning of the fourth wave of U.S. migration, with rising numbers of immigrants coming from Latin America and Asia. So it's safe to assume that the sample of children used to establish this diagnosis didn't accurately reflect the population of children that were living in the U.S. at the time. The DSM-3, published in 1980, reconceptualized the disorder by focusing on problems with attention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. The diagnosis was renamed Attention Deficit Disorder with and without hyperactivity, also known as ADD. This was the same year that the Rubik's Cube made its international debut at the British Toy and Hobby Fair, and the year that Pac-Man was released in Japan. So it's really interesting to imagine the impact that these games had on children that were being screened for for ADD. The term Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, also known as ADHD, was introduced in the DSM-4 published in 1994. It distinguished impairing symptoms under inattention and hyperactivity-impulsivity. Diagnostic criteria required that individuals exhibit 6 or more of the symptoms under either domain. The combined type, inattentive type, and hyperactivity/impulsivity subtypes were created based on these distinctions. And additional criteria included age of onset being prior to 7 years of age, impairment in at least 2 settings, such as home or school, clear evidence of clinically significant impairment in functioning as a result of the inattention or hyperactivity/impulsivity, and the symptoms are not better explained by another disorder, which at the time included autism. The current DSM-5, which was published in 2013, had a subtle but significant revision from the previous publication. So the name ADHD is still being used. Modifiers such as mild/severe or moderate were added to indicate the severity of the disorder. The terminology ADHD subtypes was changed to presentations to reflect increasing evidence that symptoms are fluid within individuals throughout their lifespan. So, for example, since inattention is relatively stable across development, while hyperactivity/impulsivity may wane with age, many children diagnosed with combined type ADHD eventually transition to a predominantly inattentive presentation later in life. Adults and older adolescents only need 5 of the 9 symptoms in either domain rather than the 6 of the 9 for diagnostic criteria. So evidence suggested that certain ADHD patient groups, such as those with high intelligence, predominantly inattentive symptoms, or in highly structured environments, began to experience significant impairments much later in life when, not much later in life, but later in life when expectations for self-management increased. And so individuals whose ADHD isn't identified until adulthood, they may have difficulty recalling the age they first experienced the impairments due to the inherent memory problems associated with ADHD. So the age of onset was revised from 7 to 12 to reduce some of the diagnostic issues. Research has shown no meaningful differences in functioning, response to treatment, or outcomes in individuals who display ADHD symptoms prior to age 7 compared to those displaying symptoms in older ages. And functional impairments that previously needed to be clinically significant were revised to only need to reduce the quality of social, academic, or occupational functioning. And lastly, autism spectrum disorder was removed as an exclusionary diagnosis due to evidence supporting that individuals can have both diagnoses of autism and ADHD, which I've seen people refer to as ADHD. And so to conclude this lesson, I wanted to reiterate that our current understanding of ADHD is that it is a neurobiological disorder characterized by persistent and impairing symptoms of but it's important to understand how the intersections of someone's identity can influence not only how these symptoms present, but how they're interpreted by the people around them. And more people are realizing they have ADHD because diagnostic criteria may have excluded them in the past. And so the DSM-6 is expected to be published sometime between 2023 to 2028 based off of historical trends. So I anticipate a lot more people may learn that they have this diagnosis in the future as we continue to learn more about it. And so if you made it this far, thank you so much. And please feel free to leave a comment if anything resonates with you or if there's any topics that you want me to discuss in a later video. Thank you.